Good afternoon. This is Debra V. Wilson, just outside of Janesville, Wisconsin, the ever-warming space just out of Janesville, Wisconsin, with our temperatures going up. The date today is the 22nd of December, 2016. The time is 1300 hours and 33 minutes, and that's GMT minus 6. This is a quick podcast on something I had the good fortune to see. As I mentioned, I'm in the States, and I had the good fortune to be able to see online BBC 2 Muslims Like Us, Part 1 and Part 2. And briefly, I want to just talk about my feelings and thoughts about it, and that's appropriate to say my feelings and my thoughts. There were 10 Muslims. 10 Muslims stayed together in a house in York, and the program's aim was to show multiple expressions of Islam and multiple conceptualizations of Islam. There was a heavy emphasis on South Asian Muslims. There were some white Muslims, and there were 2 Muslims of African descent. There was a gay Muslim. I feel like the BBC attempted to show some diversity. I was disappointed that while there was an older white woman who was a convert, there were no women of African descent. Or visible African descent on the program. It would have been, I think, informative to have an African Muslim woman or an Afro-Caribbean Muslim woman, not to say, of course, that 1 or 2 Muslims can speak for an entire ethnic group. My initial response to the program was there was a lot going on. The program was looking at how Muslims how these particular Muslims, and therefore conflating how Muslims and British Muslims might be expressing Islam and might be engaging with their identity as a British national. Do you see yourself as British? Do you see yourself as English? And then there was how white British people might engage with British Muslims, and how other South Asians might engage, who are not Muslim, might engage with British Muslims. One of the problems I had with the program was the 2 black characters, and it almost seemed like a performance, although it was real. So the 2 black men, Muslims. One of the men, Nigerian, ended up being cast and conceptualized by the South Asians as a bully. And I thought that was interesting, particularly because there was all this discussion about racism in the British Ummah, and it was interesting but informative at the same time, because you have to watch the program, the 2 episodes, if you haven't seen it. And as this one young black man who had legitimate concerns about something and about his space and boundaries being respected, and he gave voice to that, and there was a group of South Asian Muslims who one of the South Asian Muslims felt literally terrorized by him and broke down into tears. And then the other, one of the other women began to literally name call. This young man was being called names constantly on a regular basis, that he was a bully, simply because he was giving voice to, you stepped over my boundaries. I feel like my boundaries have been violated. And in an earlier case in which he was talking about racism in the British Ummah and being told it didn't exist by a person who's white. Then the other black person on the program, Huck. He's already been arrested and jailed for the security services concerns about some of his utterances. I thought he was, I guess the aim of the program was to show the diversity in British people who are Muslims. So I got that. But, and this is my opinion, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a psychologist, so this is just my opinion. Not only did I experience and think that some of Huck's statements, particularly about the Shia Muslim who was in the program, were possibly threatening, and I'm trying to be less than emotive here. They were definitely troubling, and I'm not an expert in British law, but some of his utterances, if I were on the receiving end, were so troubling that I probably would have reached out to someone in law enforcement. Then there was that aspect. Then there was the other aspect that he made these utterances about his construct of Islam, which was, in my opinion, very narrow, very fear-based, very retaliatory. And I have met Muslims in Britain who construct the faith in that manner. I have met white people in Britain who construct their life's journey in that manner. But I guess when I think about all the Big Brother house show programs I've seen in this country, the U.S., and the UK, I guess I don't know why I've never seen the intentional introduction of a character who appears to not only be grappling with what's appropriate, but what's legal, and vocally condoning acts that I view as illegal. And for me, I think the program, my opinion, was trying to normalize the fact that, my opinion, that there is diversity in Islam. And that diversity is normal and wonderful and fabulous. But the problem I had with the young man, and I think maybe that's why I call the two black men characters as in a movie, was because Huck's journey is real. It's not it's not fictional, but I don't understand, and this is where I'm troubled, are they going to do a white program in which they show white British people and then have a person who espouses is from the EDL? Certainly, and I've met white people from the EDL. I've met white people from the EDL in both London and Birmingham. I guess I didn't understand why at some point the programmers didn't step in and announce that they had trouble with his utterances. This is, if not illegal, definitely inappropriate. So I thought the program was excellent in that it touched on certain topics. I understand often in television, whether it's this country, the U.S., or the UK, or any part of the world, sometimes television, to get a point across, sometimes television becomes hyperbolic. So people operate, no pun intended, in the extremes to make a point. And that's what was churning at me about the program. That one black man was cast as a bully, and then the other black man was continually being referred to as troubled, emotionally unstable, and a nut. That I found problematic. And also I found problematic that no more is, if you were doing a Big Brother house in America or in the UK and you wanted to show a plethora of people in there and they all happen to be white, people who are engaged in criminal behavior, they're human. They may not be engaging in behavior we find acceptable, but they're human. But I think most people would agree that that's not within the normal, quote unquote, expression of our humanity. So to have a very quote unquote fashionably dressed women, one woman, two women who were covered, a Shia, Sunnis, LGBT, that's within the functional, and there's so much more within the functional expression of being a human who happens to be Muslim. But whilst it happens in every community, it certainly isn't within the normality of human functionality to wish death upon anyone, because they don't perform their existence in a way you think they should, whether that's based out of religion or political ideology. And I guess I felt Huck's presence on the program was to almost, I have met British Muslims who think some people, gay people, should be killed. But I certainly don't think that is a quote unquote normal expression of Islam. And I guess that was where I would take umbrage with the program. I felt the man was troubled. I know there are British Muslims and other people of all nationalities, of all faiths, and none who believe that LGBT people are unnatural and they should be killed. But I would like to think that most of us know that that's not within the normalcy of performing our humanity. Now, if the program's point was to say, here are an example of British Muslims, isn't that already the context in which Muslims are viewed as? Archaic, prehistoric, out to beat women and kill homosexuals? Isn't that what we already think? Do we need another example of it? And how does that help with social cohesion? And how does that facilitate calming of the waves? And then the program's casting of the white people in the I think he was South Asian, and I apologize, man who wasn't Muslim is almost civilized. Then let's go look at, well, Muslims are the new blacks. So let's go look at the black people perform and all their weirdness, because we're the norm, and let's see how close they get. I think that the program is intensely and miraculously and marvelously informative. The fact that I've spent almost 15 minutes thinking about it and talking about it, and I was prompt to make this podcast, says something about the program. I think I would recommend you to watch it at least once, both episodes. And I would say that when you watch it, the program intentionally and unintentionally gives voice to the dynamics that are now alive and present in Britain. And I believe those dynamics are, in many cases, an anathema to social cohesion and therefore the security of the collective body that is the UK. Watch the program. It gives voice to so many things, and I think in some cases unintentionally, but watch it. It was frustrating, it was unpleasant for me, but watch it as the BBC gives voice to narratives, all manner of narratives. This is Debra V. Wilson, just outside of Janesville, Wisconsin, and like I said, every day it seems to be getting warmer and warmer, so I'm happy about that. And thank you for listening.